Hello everyone, myself Dr. K. Sujata, Associate Professor, Department of Information Technology. In our today's session, we are going to explain about constructors. So here we are going to discuss on what is a constructor, how to write a constructor to a class, what is the difference between constructor and method, what are the various types of constructors that we have, and some example programs related to the different types of constructors, and also we are going to see constructor overloading. So these are the concepts that we are going to cover in this session. Now see here, what is a constructor? A constructor is a special method of a class which is invoked automatically whenever an object of a class is created. So a constructor is very similar to a method. The constructor is very similar to a method, and it is also to be called as a special method of a class, but this can be automatically invoked whenever an object of a class is created. So we know that method cannot be automatically invoked. We need to create an object for the class. We need to access the method by using that object. It cannot be automatically invoked. But constructor can be automatically invoked whenever an object is created for that class. And coming to the characteristics of constructors, so here I have represented four characteristics. See those characteristics. Same name as the class. So always the constructor should have the same name as the class. Whatever the name I given to the class, the same name should be present for the constructor, and no return types. Constructor doesn't have any return types. We are saying that constructor is very similar to a method and it is a special method of a class. A method contains the return types, but constructor doesn't have any return types, and automatically called when an object is created. That I already told you. So when if I want to access a method, I need to explicitly access that method by creating an object. But coming to the constructor, it can be automatically invoked whenever an object is created for a class. Used to select initial values for object attributes. Generally, the constructor is used to assign some values to the initial variables which are present in my object or in my class, whatever the variables I have declared in my class. For assigning initial values to those variables, we can use mainly constructors. So these four are the special characteristics of the constructors. It should have the same name as class, it doesn't have any return types, and it cannot be automatically invoked, and it can be the main purpose of that constructor is to give the initial values to the variables in the class. And how to define a constructor, how to write a constructor, what the syntax that we need to follow for writing a constructor. So see here, I have written a class, the class name as test. For this class, I want to create a constructor. So now how I can create a constructor? I already informed you that it is having a characteristic that the name of constructor should be equivalent to the name of class. So that's why here I have used the same name for defining the constructor. And also we discussed that the constructor doesn't have any return types. So I have not mentioned any return type, but I can represent a constructor as a public or private. By using some access modifier, I can represent the constructor, but doesn't have any return types. Now here, whatever the body I want to write in the constructor, I can write the body of the constructor here. So this is the main syntax: class name, and here constructor name, and what is the body which is present in the constructor, that I can write here. So this is the syntax that we need to follow for creating a constructor for my class. Now here you can see an example program in Java. I have written a class whose name is main, which contains a variable called name of type string, and here I am creating a constructor for this class. Main is the name of the constructor. Now in this constructor, I have written some body. This body contains two statements. The first statement is print statement, which prints the text constructor called, and here I have taken the variable name for which I have assigned the value program age. Next, I closed the class, I closed the constructor as well as after closing the constructor, here I want to access this constructor or I want to invoke this constructor. For invoking that constructor, here I have taken the main method. Now here I created the object for the class, whatever I have. So whenever I created an object, automatically the constructor can be invoked. Now here I print the statement I have printed is the name is, here what the name I want to print, object dot name. So this object dot name, this can be, the name variable can be accessed from constructor, so whose name is program age. Now in this case, what becomes the output of my program? So here the output of my program becomes, so here you can see that, so here first it prints the name is, so here plus we are concatenating this one with object dot name. What is my object dot name? Program age. So this becomes the output of my program, right? So here this explains about how to create a constructor. Here you can see constructor is used to initialize the state of an object, but method is used to expose the behavior of an object. So here constructor always is used to initialize the state of the object, but that is used, method is always used to explain or to expose the behavior of an object. Constructor must not have the return types, but method must have return type. If it is not having any return type, at least we need to represent a void as the return type. Now constructor is invoked implicitly, but method should be invoked explicitly by calling with the object name. And the Java compiler provides default constructor if you don't have any constructors. So if you have not created any constructor for the class, so a compiler automatically creates the constructor whenever we created an object for the class. Now but method is not provided by the compiler in any case. Any method cannot be created by the compiler. Constructor name must be same as the name of the class, but method name may be same or may not be same with the class. So these are the main differences between constructors and methods in Java. Next, coming to the different types of constructor, basically we have three types of constructors: default constructors, non-parameterized constructors, parameterized constructors. Non-parameterized constructors are also to be called as no argument constructors. No argument constructors. Here you can see default constructor which automatically provided if no other is defined. If no other constructor is defined, by default or automatically provided, that is to be called as default constructor. And coming to no argument constructors, explicitly defined with no parameters. Here a constructor is explicitly defined in a class but with no parameters. No parameters are represented in the method. Now parameterized constructor takes parameters to initialize the object fields, whatever the object fields, whatever the object variables that are present, to initialize those object variables, it uses the parameters. Now here we are going to see these different types of parameters. So first one, no argument constructors or no parameterized, non-parameterized constructors. So here these non-parameterized constructors are similar to method. So it may or may not have any parameters. So here like method, so sometimes we may give parameters in the method, sometimes we may not give any parameters in the method. In the same way, constructor can also be defined with parameters or without parameters. So here if a constructor doesn't accept any parameters, that it is known as a no argument constructor or non-parameterized constructor. Now here you can see the example. Here I have written a class named company. so which contains a variable string, a variable called name whose data type is string, and here I have defined a constructor company. So here I have not passed any parameters. So here this constructor is non-parameterized constructor or no argument constructor. Now here name is equal to, we initialized that variable which is present in my class with program each, and I closed the constructor and I closed the class. Now here I have created for writing a main method, here I have taken a separate class whose name is main, and here I have written the main method. Now in this main method I have created object for my class, so with the name obj. Now here I accessed the variable name with the object name what I created. Right. So now if you see the example output of this program, so what it prints, company name is equal to, so whatever the value I assigned to the variable name, that value can be printed there, which is program means. Now this is to be called as no argument constructors or non-parameterized constructors. Now coming to Java parameterized constructors, so some constructors may accept one or more parameters. Such constructors are to be called as parameterized constructors. Now here you can see the example for parameterized constructors. Here I have a class main. Now I have a variable named languages. Now here of type string. Here I have created a constructor for my class. This constructor is having a parameter. So this is to be called as a parameter. Now this constructor is accepting one parameter. So if I want, I can write more number of parameters also. Now here what I am doing, whatever the value I am assigning to this parameter, that I am assigning to the variable which I have created. So here I will give some value to this parameter. This value can be assigned to the variable what I have in my class. Now here I want to print a statement, languages plus programming languages. Now here whatever the value which is present in languages, that I want to concatenate with the term programming languages. Now here I have written the main method. Now here I have created two objects for my class. So first object name is object1, which takes a value Java. So now this value Java can be assigned to this parameter lang, again which can be assigned to the value languages. Now from there it prints languages Java, that is it prints the value which is present in languages is now Java. So Java programming language, it prints Java programming language. So after that here I have created another object with the name object2, which takes a parameter value Python. So now this value is assigned to lang. The value which is present in this parameter is assigned to languages. Now here it prints Python programming language as the output. Now here you can see the third object. In this third object I have created object 3 is created for the given class with the parameter value C. Now the same value can be assigned to the parameter lang, that can be assigned to languages. Now which prints C programming language. Right. So I hope that everybody understand what is the difference between parameterized constructor and non-parameterized constructor. So one more is there, one that is default constructor. We need to talk about default constructors. Now if we do not create any constructor, the Java compiler automatically creates no argument constructor. That such constructor itself is to be called as default constructor. So if you not create explicitly any constructor for your class, your compiler automatically creates a no argument constructor, which is to be called as default constructor. Now here you can see that I have a class main which contains two variables A and B. A is of type integer and B is of type boolean. Now here I have not created any constructor in this class. Directly I call the main method. Now here I created an object for my class. So whenever I created an object for my class, the compiler automatically invokes the constructor for that class. Such constructor is to be called as default constructor. Now here you can see I want to print a statement default value. Now here I want to access A is equal to object.A and B is equal to object.B. Whatever the values which are present in the variables A and B can be accessed here. Those values can be printed here. Now you can see the output of the program. So now whatever the statement I have in this statement, that is printed default value. Now A is equal to, so initially A doesn't have any value. The default value, since A is of integer type, the default value that is present in A is 0. That's why it has printed the value as 0. And here boolean B I defined. I have not given any value for B. The default value which is present in B is false. That false is printed here, which is to be called as default constructor, right? So now these are the three types of constructors that we have. So one is default constructor, non-parameterized constructor and parameterized constructor. Next, constructor overloading. We need to see constructor overloading. So we know that method can be overloaded and method can be overridden. In the same way how we are overloading the method, in the same way constructors can also be overloaded. Now how to do the overloading of constructors? See here, creating two or more constructors with different parameters is called as constructor overloading. So a same class, the same class contains two or more constructors with different parameter numbers. Such type of creation is to be called as constructor overloading. Now here you can see an example, public class demo. Demo is my class name. So now if I want to create a constructor for this class, I need to create with the same name. Now here I have created a constructor with the same name demo, but here I have not given any parameters in this constructor. So this is to be called as a non-parameterized constructor. Now I want to create another one more constructor for the same class. Here I have created another one more constructor which takes a parameter s of type string, and here I have created one more constructor for the same class which takes one parameter I of type integer. Now here for the same class I have created three constructors which is to be called as constructor overloading. Now here we can see an example program for that constructor overloading. See here I have class rectangle which contains two variables, length and width. Two variables are there. Now first I am creating a constructor rectangle which doesn't take any parameters, which is to be called as non-parameterized constructor. Now here I am assigning a value 0 to the variable length and assigning a value 0 to the variable width in this constructor. Now here you can see I am taking another constructor with two parameters. The two parameters are length and width. The two parameters are length and width. Now whatever the values I am giving to this length, that value I want to assign to the variable which is present in my class. For this I want to assign. So that's why here this is a keyword which represents these two variables. So current instance variable can be represented by using this keyword. So this dot length which represents the variable which is present in my class, this dot width which represents the variable which is present in my original class. Now whatever the value which is present in length can be assigned to here, whatever the value which is present in width can be assigned to here, right? Now here you can see one more constructor I have created, which takes only one parameter. That parameter is side. Whatever the value which is present inside, that can be assigned to length and the same can be assigned to width. Now here see how this can be executed. So see here, I have taken the main method, class for main method, and I have taken the main method. Now I created object for the rectangle. So RECT1 is the object name. Now doesn't have any parameters. Now here I have created another object for the same class, RECT2, which takes two parameters 10 and 20. Now this length will be assigned. In the second constructor, the length will be assigned 10 and width will be assigned 20. The same values will be given to the length and width of the variables which are present in main class. Now I have created another one more object, RECT3, which takes a value 5, which invokes the third constructor which contains only one argument. So here you can observe the program contains three types of constructors. So the first constructor is non-parameterized constructor. This is non-parameterized constructor, and here this is parameterized constructor, and this also a parameterized constructor. How the compiler differentiates among these three means, if when I am creating an object, if I have not given any value, here when I am creating an object, if I have not given any value, it automatically invokes the non-parameterized constructor. If I have given two values, it invokes the constructor which contains two parameters. If I have given one value, this invokes the constructor which contains a single value, right? So like that, based on the number of parameters, the compiler can decide which constructor is to be invoked, right? So in this way we can create or we can do the overloading of constructors. So I hope that everybody understand what is constructor, what are the different types of constructor, what is constructor overloading. So here you can see that, so this covers entirely all the things. Now here this is my class name. For this class I have created a constructor. This constructor is non-parameterized constructor, and here I have created one more constructor with parameters. This is to be called as parameterized constructor. And here I have created another constructor with two parameters. This is also to be called as parameterized constructor. Here you can understand what is constructor, how a constructor can be defined, and what are the different types of constructors, and how to do the overloading of constructors. All these things are represented here in this same diagram. So this gives the summary of the constructors. Thank you for listening.